Hello everyone, Robin here at Toadstool Tarot, and I saw a prompt hashtag challenge today. Simon at the Hermit's Cave introduced it. It's from Madwitch, and the hashtag, a lengthy one, is called hashtag the 3 systems of tarot but not the originals. I wasn't really sure I understood the concept, so I got into a bit of a debate in the chat when Simon presented it. And then I went to check out Madwitch's original video that introduced it. And I think the idea is in the 3 tarot systems, which are the Tarot de Marseille, the Thoth, and the Rider-Waite-Smith system. If you couldn't use the original inspirations for those decks, in other words, you couldn't use the Crowley Thoth, Lady Frieda Harris Thoth deck, you couldn't use the Pamela Colman Smith, Rider-Waite-Smith version of the deck, or you couldn't use a historic version of the Tarot de Marseille. Now that covers quite a bit. Then which decks would you pick and choose to use? I was tempted for the Marseille, to pull my favorite one, but it is a restoration of a historic deck, so I felt like, okay, that won't count. That's all out of limits. So I'm going to pass that by. And it's tricky now. I think more than likely I would pick a modern version like the Trionfi Della Luna, and I'm sure that a lot of people are going to choose this deck. And in actuality, I prefer the illustrated version, illustrated pip version of this deck to the original one. He has an original one with the pips laid out like a Marseille, but he's got a new one that where all the cards have scenes in them, and I actually prefer that to this, so I'm not choosing this one, but that's probably one of the first ones I'd reach for in a Marseille deck. I'm gonna say, I know I shouldn't be picking more than one, you're supposed to pick one, but since the concept's a little hard for me to grasp or define, I've gotten down to a couple of options just for clarification, because I'm still not quite sure what I'm doing here. One of the other ones that I would go for a modern version is the Tarot de Desozark, which actually Simon mentioned in his presentation, because I love the bright, vivid colors in this deck, and it does pretty much follow the Marseille layouts of the pips in a modern art style. It's really pretty traditional. However, I've heard this referred to or described online as, not strictly speaking, a Tarot de Marseille deck. Not sure why, because it feels pretty accurate to me, and it is a gloriously colorful deck that I would tend to reach for. But as an alternative to this, if this is not strictly speaking a Marseille deck, I came up with this other one, the 7th Sphere. This is also another sort of modern version of a Tarot de Marseille. It's on plastic cards, which are extremely slippery, in a really beautiful palette with very sort of pastel palette, in a very modern representation of the Tarot de Marseille. Now, currently, I'm coming around to very different ideas about the Marseille. I am sort of diverging onto this path currently, where I'm rethinking what the Marseille is all about, and having I'm questioning the authenticity of the backstory of the Marseille. It feels to me like originated from a gaming system whereby the major arcana and the minor arcana don't naturally work together and were two different gaming systems that somebody way back when they decided, oh, I can divine from this deck of cards, and the important messages are in the 22 majors, which actually a lot of the French and some of other Europeans use to divine from just the majors. Hence my fascination with majors-only cards, because they seem really important, the important or major mysteries, major messages of the deck. I feel like somebody decided, well, that's not enough cards. Let's force the others, the minors, the pips, the playing card part of the deck into the system of divining. And I don't feel like there's a natural connection there. It feels artificial to me, and I'm growing to feel like a greater appreciation for major arcana decks, and feeling like the Tarot de Marseille is a forced together system, and that's my own thing. So I don't know where I am moving forward with these in terms of how I might read from Marseille decks. I still have favorites that I love, but I don't use them that often, and when I do, I gravitate towards the majors. Having said that, for the purpose of this challenge, I would probably choose, one of those three Marseille decks to use. Secondly, there is the system, the Thoth, illustrated by Lady Frieda Harris, devised or originated by Crowley from the System of the Golden Dawn or something. I'm not quite clear on the historic part of it. And since I actually have three different size versions of the Thoth, and I still have yet to fully embrace or understand it, or even wade into it. I get just so far in studying, and then I kind of feel pushed back or shut out. So I don't really use the Thoth, and I'm not familiar enough yet to recognize how or where it translates into a modern version or another version of it. But I think most definitely it's modernized heavily by the Liber T Tarot of Stars Eternal deck, which is you can tell by looking at a lot of the images, it is a sort of a smoother, modernized illustration following the lead of Lady Frieda Harris's work. And I do like the colors in these. I like the patterns. I like the rounded, smooth, shaded variants on the images. It doesn't make it any easier for me to embrace Thoth yet. But I think if I had a choice between picking up the Thoth and trying to read with it and picking this deck up, I'd probably choose this deck. Those are the backs. That again is the Liberty Tarot of Stars Eternal. Then there's another one that I'm not sure, given the choice between the two, whether I'd pick that one or this one, because I'm not entirely clear if this is the Thoth system or a different system. This is called the Navigators Tarot of the Mystic Sea by Julia Turk. And this one has some key words on the cards, like the it's also got the sort of Kabbalah influence back of the card. Key words on some of the cards the way that the Thoth does. The images are a little easier for me to read because they're a little more scenic, but they're sort of surrealist scenes. I have been sort of able to read with this a little bit, and I have two versions of this because I don't generally like keywords. So I think this is out of print, but I found two online, and they were two different publications. One was a non-glossy deck that I got first, and I trimmed the cards just down to the images. And then I got a second one because I thought maybe it was important to keep with the keywords, and this one happened to be glossy, which I'm not as fond of, but the deck is intact, which is why I'm showing you this version. So we have a lot of sort of dancing, swirling, gliding, flying figures, fighting figures. It's a hard to read deck in a way, but it's intriguing for sure. And I do like the illustrations and the style. It's just not, I would say of the three systems, the Marseille and the Thoth systems are less approachable for readings for me, unless, like I said, you just use the majors from the Marseille. But as to the Thoth, not quite there yet. Now, the third and final one for me, this was pretty easy. It's a deck that I've been showing and using a lot lately. The original is a Japanese deck called the Kishobu Tarot. I jokingly referred to it as the deck of the blondes because it was created by a Japanese artist in 1972 or 3, and all the figures in it have blonde hair, Caucasian blondes, which seems odd to me. And also it's sort of fashioned after a lot of the majors from the Tarot de Marseille, but the minors are illustrated as in a Rider-Waite-Smith system, and you can see in the sort of close-up arrangements of the cards how they are not modeled specifically off of Pamela Colman Smith's art, but they're pretty much positioned the same way in terms of the elements, symbolic elements in the card. So they're not as if someone took, tracing paper to her images, but they depict the same imagery that she chose to depict in her minors. So this is the one that I would reach for in the RWS, other than reaching for an actual RWS. And this is actually, this has been retitled or reconfigured, renamed the Old Fellow Tarot. I'm sorry I can't remember the name of the woman who did this or made this available again at Make Playing Cards, but I'm thrilled that she did because I love the card stock. Actually, this version, I have a couple versions. There's one in linen and there's this one in plastic, but it's not a super slippery plastic. So, yeah, and the original Keishobou was on cardstock that I just couldn't stand. Very, very crude cardstock. But the imagery I loved, and this recaptures it. So those are my three versions, three that I would reach for if I couldn't reach for the original Thoth, Marseille, or RWS. And there you have it. And I'm sure many other people will try Madwitch's challenge, and I'm curious to see what they come up with, because maybe there is a Thoth variant out there that will make it easier for me to understand or embrace that system. I don't know. We're always learning, aren't we? I'll see you next time.